Ohana Book 2 Birds of a Feather Chapter 2. Tails couldn't sleep. It wouldn't have been the first time since his arrival on Earth to seek and help Sonic the Hedgehog, and it wouldn't be the last. There was so much to see and explore and do, so much to learn and read and discover. This backwater planet was so different from his own, and when the Wachowskis had offered him a bed in their loft, he jumped at the chance. After all, there was no one waiting for him at home, and he had grabbed everything important when he'd learned that Knuckles was on Sonic's scent before he began tracking him down. The humans in Green Hills were nice, most of the time. Wade, and especially Maddie and Tom were the nicest by far, but he had pretended not to notice the weird look on people's faces when he talked about things beyond his age comprehension, or the shared looks when they saw his twin Tails shift behind him as he walked. Tails had grown to ignore the jibes on his home planet, and he could ignore them here too, because outside of this little house in their neck of the woods, the rest of the world didn't matter. Except sometimes it did. Having two older brothers, imagine him with older brothers. If only the people of his village, if only his parents, could see him now, meant that sometimes he overheard conversations, especially if they thought he was asleep or particularly busy with an experiment. Sonic was curious since meeting two aliens like him, and he had questions for Knuckles, considering the Echidna had gone from being his enemy to being their friend. Tails wasn't ignorant. He had seen the robotics that Robotnik was capable of. Back at the ice-capped mountain in Siberia, he knew that his fiddling with much of the Wachowskis' electronics must have weirded Sonic out. The Roomba had sentience now, and even he didn't know how that had happened. He could hear talking in the attic and paused underneath on the stairs, ears folding back against his head while he listened.
What was it like working for Egghead anyway? You've never talked about it before.
What's there to talk about?
Knuckles was straight to the point, the sound of metal clanging to the floor as he finished his reps echoing along the floorboards.
He was his hobo. He left his minion behind and manipulated me into leading him through the Owl Tribe's labyrinth. Manipulated me into helping him because I foolishly mentioned to Master Emerald held unimaginable power.
Snore on your cow.
Sonic laughed, and Tails gathered there was the similar look of confusion on Knuckles' face as it was on his.
Remind me to show you Mullen sometimes. I think you like it. But he was pretty cookie, wasn't he?
I am unfamiliar with how humans are supposed to be, but I suppose by Echidna standards he was a madman.
Knuckles hummed.
The legend of the tribes gathering the Charles Emeralds to wage war. There was a tale my father would tell of an ancestor who used them to wipe out a rival tribe and grow mad with power. A precautionary tale that too much would drive someone insane. The mechanical man was intelligent, but perhaps I should have seen the signs.
Like Tails is.
The kid felt his blood run cold, and Tails didn't hear the rest. The stars were bright in the sky. Not quite as bright as they could be given the lights of Green Hills, but just enough that Tails could see them from his vantage point on the roof. Laying with his paws crossed over his stomach, he had felt like dinner, and he knew the Wachowskis must be worried about him, but he had sent Maddie a text with his Miles Electric to let her know that he was okay. He just needed some time to himself. A breeze swept across the rooftop, the sound of Ozzy barking inside reaching his ears as easily as the crickets chirping in the forest. Smart. Back home, that had been a label that had meant so many things, too many things, that his village ostracized him for. It was bad enough that he had been born with a second tail that foxes weren't usually born with, but his intelligence had been another factor for the insults that had swept his way. Freak was an understatement, and if someone did understand something and he explained it using too many words, he would get a look and a mutter of weirdo. Tails had ended up building his own hut on the edge of the town, much like the Wachowskis, where he could experiment and keep to himself. And then Sonic had caught his attention from halfway across the galaxy. It was still hard to believe he was here on Earth, doing things with the blue hedgehog that he'd never dreamed of doing. Maddie and Tom made sure they were all well fed and loved, as if they were their own, but Tails wondered sometimes what was in it for them. His village never helped anyone else if they could help it, and nobody had ever helped him before. He knew the basics of foraging and cooking but had mostly survived off of what he could find. To have a full, warm meal in front of him was a blessing and a curse, because as good as Tom's cooking was, it dragged up awful memories of digging through the trash or being run off someone's property when he got too close to the window. The attic window opened, and Tails heard the roof scrambling of a heavy form poking through the crack.
I have found your hiding place, Fox.
Hey, Knuckles.
Boots appeared in his line of vision and the Echidna sweated down next to him before Knuckles drew himself into his own seat, looking at his younger brother before looking at the stars. Lookered.
Not as many as is visible in my tribal home at any rate, however. I do not think you are here to simply study.
Tails drew his breath in and out, and his tails draped over his waist from where they were resting beside him.
You think it'll turn out like that, man?
Knuckles looked at him, expression unreadable, and Tails lifted his hands so that he could look at his paws, for once bare of his gloves.
In my village, being smart, even just a little, I could build things nobody else could even think of before I was 2. They were technophobies, the people in my village, I mean.
The Echidna's brow furrowed.
I mean they were distrusting of technology, a bit like you with the vacuum cleaner.
It makes loud noises.
Knuckles rumbled, tail flicking behind him as he looked out at the small township beyond the house.
My home did not have such machines, but what makes you believe you will turn out like the doctor?
I heard you and Sonic talking.
A soft.
Oh.
A left the older line.
I'm smart, Sonic. Must be thinking about how to get rid of me before I can cause any problems.
A fist found its way to his head and Tails let out a yelp, sitting up and glaring at Knuckles.
What was that for?
For thinking that the hedgehog would do something like that.
Knuckles huffed, withdrawing his fist and draping it back over his knee.
Sonic may be a lot of things, but he is loyal, just as you are, and noble, as are the Pretzel Lady and Donut Lord. If they can take in me, someone who destroyed their house and dwelling and tried to kill their son, then they will not abandon you. You followed Sonic till the end. You kept by his side even when things got tough. You did not abandon your mission.
Knuckles turned his gaze back towards him and Tails could swear there was a fondness to his eyes.
It is more than what I can say for the doctor, who abandoned his minion and was going to kill me in the temple. You have no need to worry, Fox.
But what if?
I will not hear more of this. You are part my power, and I am proud to call you my friend and brother.
Brother, Tails inhaled sharply then and his ears folded back, raising his paw to furiously wipe at the corner of his eye where he felt pricking. Instead, he pressed himself into Knuckles' side, feeling the Echidna startle, and whined into his red fur. The attic window creaked and there was hesitance before there was a large mitt at his back, another in his hair, and he felt Knuckles rest his chin against his head.
You will be fine, kid.
Sonic shook his head, then mused, and closed the attic window again, deciding to give them time.